This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Italian Citizenship Assistance. We, of course, are back again with Italian attorney from Italiancitizenshipassistance.com and head of the U.S. office, Marco Permunian. How are you doing, Marco?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for coming back for another episode. Of course, we are back here to talk a little bit more about Italian citizenship, but today we wanted to focus a little bit on a different area and compare it to Irish citizenship by descent, because there are a lot of people who do happen to be eligible for both Irish citizenship by descent and Italian citizenship by descent. So in this episode, we wanted to talk a little bit about both, a little bit of comparison between them, and talk a little bit more about these subjects. So Marco, just getting into it, maybe what are some of the major differences between just the application process or eligibility?
I believe we can start with citizenship by descent. Of course, we can talk about citizenship through marriage and citizenship by residency.
Fantastic.
But I think most people will be interested in knowing what are the differences between Italian citizenship by descent and Italian citizenship and Irish citizenship by descent. I believe the main difference is the eligibility rules, and more precisely, the number of generations that you can go back to claim your citizenship. As we know, with Italian citizenship, there isn't really any generational limit, meaning you can apply for Italian citizenship by descent regardless of who was your last Italian-born ancestor. It could be your father, your grandparent, your great-grandparent, or your great-great-grandparent. Of course, there are some other eligibility requirements that must be met, but if you meet those requirements, there isn't really a generational limit. Maybe we can talk briefly about these eligibility requirements for Italian citizenship by descent, or the main ones. Your Italian-born ancestor must have been still alive in 1861. So even if he or she was living outside of Italy, as long as your ancestor was alive, then you can potentially claim your Italian citizenship. And the reason why your ancestor must have been alive is because when Italy was unified as a country in 1861, then at that point, if your ancestor was alive, he or she would have gotten Italian citizenship automatically. Just because Italy was created as a country before 1861, there were just a number of states in the Italian peninsula, but there was no Italy as a country. The second most important requirement is that your Italian ancestor must have not naturalized before the birth of the next person in the Italian line born abroad and before 1912. If you meet these basic requirements, there are also other requirements which we talked about in the other videos
quite a bit
extensively.
Very extensively.
But let's say that if you meet these basic requirements, and we talked about just now about probably the two most important, then you can potentially qualify for citizenship even if your Italian-born ancestor was a great-great-grandparent. Of course, because your Italian-born ancestor must have been still alive in 1861. Normally, people go back to the great-great, or in some cases, great-great-grandparent if you are a very young applicant. But maybe we should say that again, there is no generational limit.
Yeah, no, and that's a very important topic, because there are so many people that do have a misunderstanding that they think that they've heard from somebody or some paper or some article a long time ago that there must be some type of generational limit, when that's completely not the fact. And it's so sad to see, because there are so many people who are put off by that misinformation, that misunderstanding, when they may actually be very eligible and could even have a very easy and straightforward path to citizenship.
Yeah, there are some people that call me and they ask me, they tell me, actually, I'm the last generation who can apply, so I want to do it now. And I tell them, this is not right. Your children or grandchildren can apply. And even if you don't apply, because the very interesting thing about Italian citizenship is that there is no registration or application requirement for the intermediate individuals. So the people who are in the Italian line and they were born before you, so your parent, your grandparents. So even if neither of those people ever filed an application for Italian citizenship by descent, asked for their birth certificates to be registered, even if they were completely unaware of the fact that they were actually Italian citizens, you can apply for Italian citizenship by descent. Or even if you realize that you are eligible, but you're not really interested and you're worried about your children being able to apply, there's no need to worry, because your children can apply and will be able to apply for citizenship even if you don't take any action, and this apply to any future generation.
No, it's a beautiful thing that this is. I've said it many times in these episodes and even on my own YouTube channel, that it is truly a beautiful thing that Italy gives the opportunity for so many people to have that path to be able to come back to their ancestral homeland and to connect with the land and really get to know it in a way that you can't get to know just through the stories of our ancestors, that while they are very beautiful and I have a very soft spot in my heart for them, it's just not the same as living it firsthand. But since we've been focusing so much on Italian citizenship, how does Irish citizenship differ? What are the processes and how do they differ from this general discussion of Italian citizenship by descent?
For Irish citizenship, there is a generational limit. This needs to be explained. It's not really a generational limit, but there are more strict requirements, and if somebody in the line doesn't take action, it could prevent the future generations from being able to file for Irish citizenship by descent. So basically, if you are someone who was born abroad and you have an Irish-born parent or an Irish-born grandparent, there is really no issue. You can file for Irish citizenship by descent. But then if your Irish-born ancestor is your great-grandparent, then it's less likely that you can qualify for Irish citizenship by descent. And more precisely, if the birth certificate of your parent was registered in the foreign birth registry, then you can still get Irish citizenship. But if that didn't happen, so if your parents' birth certificate was never registered in this registry, then now you are prevented from applying for Irish citizenship by descent. So for Italian citizenship, there is no such requirement. There is no... your ability to apply for Italian citizenship by descent is not affected by the previous generations ever having applied for the registration of their birth certificate. That's not a requirement. But for Irish citizenship, if you want to go farther back than your grandparent, then there is this requirement: the birth certificate of your parent has to be registered. But then if it was registered, then you can apply for Irish citizenship by descent. And then if your birth certificate gets registered, then also the next generation can do it. So there is this 2 generations limit, but then if you register the birth certificate,
it kind of gets reset, so
exactly, for each generation, as long as you do it before the next in line is born.
So it's interesting to hear how much more restrictive it is, because I know from Italian citizenship that it's not about who was registered or how they were registered. It's about the family line. Has the family line continued? And even I know in some cases it can be opened up even when there's the consideration of adoption, legal adoption, of allowing somebody to join into that family line. So it's very interesting to hear the restriction on that line of descent, that it's not just about being of Irish descent, but it's also making sure that your registration has been kept up to date, so to speak, at least generation by generation.
And the fact is, with Italian citizenship, the vast majority of the Italian Americans have an Italian-born great-grandparent. So it's actually very fortunate or good that the Italian law does not put any limitation, because otherwise, I believe probably the vast majority of people of Italian descent in America wouldn't be eligible to claim Italian citizenship because of the emigration, the big Italian emigration, which happened between the late 1800 and the early 1900. Because of that, a lot of people, they have an Italian-born great-grandparent who emigrated from Italy to America.
Yeah, no, I've spoken even with a number of people who have great-great-great or even great-great-great-great-grandparent who came from Italy, and under Italian law, just it happens to be possible because it's not a limitation by generation, clearly. But maybe moving on a little bit more, what's maybe another area that comes to mind that you see a difference between these two types of citizenship, or maybe even the processes to get citizenship?
So most people are interested in knowing what their partner or spouse, I should say, can do after they become citizens by descent. And with Italian citizenship by descent, if you become an Italian citizen by descent, then your spouse can apply for Italian citizenship even if he or she never resided in Italy. There's a number of years from the marriage that must have passed. It's 3 years, but then it's only 1.5 years if you have minor children. If the couple is residing abroad, and it's even a shorter period of time, which is 2 years or 1 year if you have minor children, if the couple is residing in Italy. But residing in Italy is not a requirement in order for your spouse to be eligible to apply for Italian citizenship through marriage. So it's possible for someone who was born in America and never visited Italy, but has an Italian ancestor, to apply for citizenship by descent. And it's also possible for the spouse of this person who never resided in Italy to become an Italian citizen through marriage. For Irish citizenship, it's a little bit different because there is a residency requirement for your spouse. Not only the foreign spouse must have been married to the Irish spouse for 3 years, but also he or she has to have resided in Ireland for 3 years before being able to file an application for Irish citizenship through marriage.
Actually, I don't blame you for getting a little tongue-tied there, because Ireland, Italy,
it's not easy.
It's like, especially when you're talking about citizenship by descent, citizenship by marriage, citizenship, blah, blah, blah. It's like, so I don't blame you there. But that's also, again, fascinating to me that there's this difference there where the Italian system, again, is a little bit more open. And in Italy, that has definitely caused some political discussions, none that have really made such major changes to absolutely abolish it. But then there have been these decrees made by the Salvini government, and that were changed and then changed again, all within the past, 2 years or so. And there was a few, like we mentioned in a recent video just a few months back, that there was again another change to try and open up the system a little bit more again. And even I've heard rumors that there's maybe still more talks about how they might change it, loosen up the laws, or even tighten them up. But of course, this is Italy, and so there's always discussions and always things in the air, but who knows if anything will happen.
Yeah, and we talked about the fact that there could be changes regarding citizenship, Italian citizenship through marriage, but there could never be changes to the rules that regulate Italian citizenship by descent.
That's
because
a very
of the
important factor.
Nature of the process, because the application for Italian citizenship through marriage is, at the end of the day, a naturalization process, and the rules can be changed by the government. But for people who qualify for Italian citizenship by descent, they basically were born with Italian citizenship, and each generation was born with Italian citizenship. So even if they changed the rule, which is pretty unlikely, it would affect only people born after the rules change, but not the people who are already living and want to now file for citizenship by descent, because those people, they became citizens when they were born, and now they just have to go through the recognition process.
But since we're on the topic of citizenship by naturalization through marriage, do we see any differences between Irish citizenship through naturalization through residency versus Italian? Any differences between the two systems?
There is a slight difference, yes. So to apply for citizenship through residency in Italy, you have to have resided in Italy for 10 years. But if you are an EU citizen, then only 4 years are necessary. But then there is another exception. If you are a non-EU citizen, but you have Italian ancestors up to the second degree, so an Italian-born parent or an Italian-born grandparent, and you don't qualify for citizenship by descent because you don't meet the eligibility requirements, because, for example, your grandparent was naturalized before your parent was born abroad. In that situation, you can apply for Italian citizenship by residency after having resided in Italy for 3 years. So there are different scenarios: 3 years for people of Italian descent, 4 years for EU citizens, and 10 years for people who are non-EU citizens and not of Italian descent. For Irish citizenship, the rule is that you have to have resided in Ireland for 5 years out of the last 9 years. So in the last 9 years, you have to have resided in Ireland for at least 5 years.
And we're talking about legal residency, about making sure that you're there with a visa, not
Of
just
course.
arriving, of course.
Yes.
Okay. And so are there maybe any other areas of differences that come to mind off the top of your head?
Of course, we're talking about 2 European countries, so the benefits of having an Irish passport or an Italian passport are very similar. Of course, you're a citizen of 2 different countries, but they're both EU countries. So if you are a citizen of one of those 2 countries, you can, of course, live in the other or live in any other EU country without the need for a visa, because we talked about this in a previous video. Within the European Union, there is this freedom of movement where you can reside wherever you want as long as you are a citizen of another European country. Of course, the 2 passports are not identical. They rank very similarly, but the Italian passport gives you access to a few more countries in the world visa-free, which means that if you have an Italian passport and if you're interested in traveling around the world, with an Italian passport, you can have access to a few more countries in comparison to the Irish passport.
But are we talking about, like, when we're saying a few, are we literally talking about a few, or is it like a few as in like a decent amount?
I think it's 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. So it's really, at the end of the day, when we're talking about visa-free, I guess it depends on what those countries are. We don't have to go into those specific details today. But that's interesting to know that there is that ever so slight difference. I guess it shows a little bit how much everybody happens to love Italy and what I call on my channel the pizza pasta and amore. Everybody loves the culture that Italy has brought to the world. So I think that's actually a really good place to finish things off, because really we've covered so many topics in such a short period of time. And so maybe if you do have any questions about Italian citizenship and Irish citizenship and would like to see another episode comparing and contrasting the two, feel free to leave that down in the comment section below or to contact Marco directly. And Marco, how can they contact you if they're looking for assistance with Italian citizenship, for example?
On our website, ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com, there is our email, info@ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com, and our telephone number.
And of course, if you are interested in seeing more content about Italian citizenship, or even if you would like to know more about Italian real estate, make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel to be able to see more content, that this little library of content that Marco and I have been working on creating for you guys. And of course, if you would like to see more content about life in Italy, living in Italy, and life as a dual citizen, you can come and check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, where I show about my life here in Italy and talk about subjects from a different kind of perspective than what we go into here from my experience as a dual citizen and somebody who lives abroad, and also showing off a little bit of Marco's hometown here in Italy, where his Italian offices happen to be. Unfortunately, I can't quite show off your American offices that you also happen to have, but while we're here in lockdown, at least I can show a little bit more of the wonderful place that we get to enjoy here in Italy. You can check out my own YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia. But of course, make sure you are subscribed to this channel so that you can continue to see more of these videos. Of course, thank you so much for joining us again. We have been here with Italian attorney and head of the U.S. Office of Italian Citizenship Assistance.com, Marco Permunian. And I am Rafael Di Furia, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
Later.